According to information from party circles, there is a dispute at the top of the right-wing extremist AfD about Tino Chrupalla's course in Russia. According to DPA information, at a meeting of the Federal Executive Board last Friday, the words were said to be unsuitable as they say he's unsuitable as a federal spokesman. The newspaper Süddeutsche Zeitung had already reported on Tuesday that a massive dispute about Chrupalla's course had broken out in the AfD leadership. It is openly discussed whether Chrupalla is still the right party leader. The trigger was his attitude in the Ukraine crisis and an ever deeper ditch between Eastern and Western associations in the AfD. From an internal chat, the newspaper quoted members of the federal board, or the member of the federal board, Joanna Kota. With someone at the top who does not see himself as a spokesman for the East and the West, we will no longer win a flower pot. On Twitter, after the state elections in Saarland, she wrote on Sunday that the AfD could not be satisfied with the result. Time for an honest analysis and a policy that also affects the West. Well, according to DPA information, there have been several hundred exits from the party since the end of February. The AfD had around 30,000 members at the turn of the year. Critics of Chrupalla's the critics linked this to his speech in the special session of the Bundestag on February 27th, a few days after the start of the Russian attack on Ukraine. The AfD boss had said there, "But it shouldn't be our goal these days to identify the one culprit." Well, with a view to German reunification in 1990, he had called for Russia's contribution to Germany and Europe, especially these days, not to be forgotten. The right-wing AfD boss had also accused Chancellor Olaf Scholz of reactivation of the Cold War. "We reject a new arms race, and that's why these 100 billion, Mr. Scholz, that's really crazy." While Chrupalla addressed the special fund for the Bundeswehr announced by the Chancellor. That sounded like a contradiction to their own party program, in which the AfD advocates strengthening the Bundeswehr. When asked by the German press agency, AfD Federal Vice Federal Chairman Stefan Brandner confirmed that there had been an argument at the board meeting last Friday. But he said tougher times, he said. He also called it not beneficial to carry something like this to the public. "Even in pressure situations, you can't work against each other. You have to work together," he said. Oh yeah. A party spokesman denied that there had been a dispute over Chrupalla's Russia-Ukraine course. The board discussed in detail the general positions of the AfD on the war in Ukraine. The spokesman also answered the question of whether Chrupalla's suitability as party leader was or is being questioned by members of the executive board and referred to the party conference planned for June. From their point of view, the delegates would then decide on the suitability of those members who stood for re-election. The right-wing extremist AfD wants to elect a new party leadership at that meeting. After Jörg Meuten's resignation, Tino Chrupalla is currently leading the party alone. He had already announced last year that he wanted to compete again. Other candidates have not yet publicly positioned themselves. There's also the question of whether the individual leadership should remain. The statutes would have to be changed for this, or whether a dual leadership should be elected again as it was before. The war in Ukraine has fueled the debate about the content orientation, the public appearance, and the personnel composition of the AfD. The party leadership and parliamentary group have officially condemned the Russian attack on Ukraine. But that's not the end of the internal party discussions. An episode from the Bundestag last week is significant. AfD MP Stefan Kotre said in a speech that the war of aggression in Ukraine, which violates international law, is causing a lot of suffering. The Russian government has it on its conscience, but when you talk about it, you always have to consider the complicity of the West. The deputy chairman of the AfD parliamentary group, Norbert Kleinwächter, then said he left the plenum and wrote on Twitter, "I distance myself with the utmost determination from the disgusting Putin propaganda that Stefan Kotre spread in the Bundestag today." So there's a lot of tension going on in that party, and we will see how that will end. I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.